Okay, so just a sanity check here. You all can see the screen and hear my voice, right? Woohoo! Okay. Happy Tuesday. Happy April 19th. Welcome to the Kansas City User Group meeting for April for the start of spring. I am Dale Ziegler. I'm a business analyst with Seven Summits, which has now been fully transitioned into IBM. So that Seven Summits name probably won't be showing up for much longer. And with me, Mr. Berger, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello. Well, before I introduce myself, do you get a fancy name still within IBM, or are you just going to be IBM? Do you know?
Well, no, they're gonna let me stay Dale Ziegler.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice of them. I'm
Um,
Jeff Berger. I'm the VP and Director of Salesforce Operations here at Academy Bank, and excited to be here with you on this sunny, hopefully where you are too, Tuesday.
yeah. You can reach both Jeff and I at that email address down there at the bottom, Kansas City-US-user at trailblazercgl.com. Don't worry, you don't need to screenshot or write that down feverishly. We will share this deck out later with that link, but any questions, any thoughts, any content suggestions, anything like that, feel free to send it over and it goes to both of us. We will try to respond as quickly as possible. I do feel bad in the last few weeks. I have been so heads down on a client project that I've been a little bit slower to respond to things than I normally am, but we are taking a look at things as questions and introductions to the group and all of that come up. So shoot us a note. As the lovely WebEx lady indicated when I hit record, we are recording this meeting. So if you're not permitted to be recorded or you're not comfortable, please drop now. But we will hopefully have the recording up on our YouTube channel by the end of the day today or tomorrow. And like I said, we will also share out the deck, which all the linkable content will be accessible, so you can get it there. Normal conference call etiquette, just please keep yourself muted unless you want to speak up, ask a question for our presenters or any other open conversation we may be having. And also, please update your participant name to your real name. Just want to remind you that this is a professional networking call. So we get it. Kids are still taking hold of conference call handles, all that kind of stuff, and it might be a gamer name, whatever. We just want to know who we're working with. So please just do a quick check and make sure that it is your real name that is showing up. Many, 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 many thank yous to our friends David and Ben at Prodly for sponsoring and for presenting. There will be a link being shared out here probably once we take my screen off for a raffle for joining. So we look for the chat for that. We'll get that shared out. And thanks again, guys, for being part of the meeting and for presenting and being here with us. We do have a Slack channel. Go ahead and send us an email to that address that we talked about a couple of minutes ago if you want to be added to the Kansas City Slack. If you are new to the Salesforce community or the Kansas City Salesforce community specifically, welcome. Anyone and everyone, no matter where you may be, you all are welcome. We are the general user group, but there is also a developers user group. We have had in the past a women in tech group. The marketers are getting back up and running again. Nonprofits, I think we're trying to move that forward a little bit, but you can get all of your information at that bit.ly up at the top, which of course is case sensitive because bit.ly. But as the general group, I mean, anyone and everyone, you're all welcome here. We've had a lot of great cross-functional conversations in the past and a lot of great Q&A, a lot of questions answered, a lot of problems solved just by being all in the same room virtually together. So if you are here, you are in the right place no matter what. But to get into more niche groups, go ahead and check out that link for more information on the other groups. If you are interested at presenting at a future meeting, please go to that speaker interest form. We would love to have you on stage. We don't have any meetings planned yet after this one, so if you have content, we'll have a meeting. We'd love to have you. Like I said, the Marketing Cloud user group I know has gotten back up and running. There is a meeting this Thursday. I don't see Aaron on here, but is anybody who is aligned with the Marketing Cloud User Group on to potentially speak to that? That's okay. Like I said, this is all linkable content, so you can go out there and check that out if you're looking to get connected with the Marketing Cloud User Group. Any user group leaders or attendees from outside Kansas City that are on the call? Let's see. Nobody chiming
That might
up
be the
yet.
first time since we've gone virtual that we haven't had a user group leader from another location.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, hey, Chico, California. Welcome. Hey, Jamie.
Northern California, my original neck of the woods. Very nice. Love seeing Chico.
Happy to have you.
Manhattan User Group, they will be having a happy hour in 2 weeks on May 2nd at, I think it's at the Tallgrass Tap Room, which I'm a little bit jealous of because you can't find Buffalo Sweat in any restaurants anywhere. You have to actually go to the source. It's a great oatmeal stout. One of my favorites, but can't get it here anymore because they had to reduce operations a few years ago. But if you are in Western or Central Kansas, or even probably as far east as Topeka, definitely click over there. They would love to see you and talk all things Salesforce over a nice drink and some appetizers. Do we have any Salesforce employees on the call? I didn't recognize any names, but that doesn't mean anything. Anyone? Salesforce? The big blue cloud? Okay, no worries. If you were Salesforce, we'd ask you to introduce yourself, and we love having you. All right, so celebrations, as everybody knows, my favorite part of the call. Any first-time attendees?
Oh, first timer in the chat.
Bonnie.
Hey, Bonnie, and Jamie, of course, from Chico, first timer. Thanks for being here.
And yes,
Bryce as
Sierra
well.
Nevada
Thank you,
is
Bryce.
definitely superior.
Lots of first timers.
Love it, love it, love it, love it.
It's great. Well, welcome. There's lots of great people here. Feel free to hit people up in the chat, or we'll hopefully have some time at the end if you want to introduce yourself after you get comfortable and ask any questions you have. But great to have you.
Yeah. Has anybody taken on a new role since our last meeting? Lindsay, what's up?
Hi, it's been a while since I've been able to join, but yeah, I moved from a pretty small startup where I was admin, BA, trainer, everything, and took a role in a consulting company based in Boston. And now I get to do BA and training with a little admin developer team to do my builds. So kind of a nice, different shift for me. Still teaching with Snap IT though, have a new class graduating soon. So very excited for them.
Hey, speaking of Snap IT, a little birdie told me that they're looking for an additional Salesforce trainer as well. So ask Lindsay about her experience and reach out to Lindsay or to me if you have questions about that role.
Yeah, absolutely. I decided to take something off my plate, but it's a wonderful opportunity. So yeah, definitely hit me up.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Congratulations, and BAs Unite. We did, so from the last meeting, Amazon Care had originally been looking for a Salesforce admin. When I clicked on the link yesterday or Friday, the page had been updated to an integration developer. So I don't know if they just reuse their pages or what that's all about, but click into it and check out for yourself. Aflac also reached out to us a couple of weeks ago to say that they were looking for 4 positions. I did see an email update like less than an hour ago and did not have a chance to update the deck. So hopefully that email is says, yep, they're still open. We're looking for people. So Brian Gordon is the gentleman that reached out to me. You can send him an email if you're interested in a support analyst. There's 2 of those roles. a senior support analyst, or a senior developer position. Trying to think, were there any other open jobs like through email or whatever that we had, Jeff?
Not through email. You know how it is where everyone always gets hit up on LinkedIn about stuff. I got hit up by a company called Fortimize, which is a financial services partner, consulting partner. They're looking, and I can connect you with somebody if you're in that space, banking in particular, and you're interested in making a move. Let me know. I'm just trying to looking through my LinkedIn messages to see if I had any other items. No, I think that was it.
Okay. And then as with IBM as my day job, if anybody's interested in IBM's vast network of offerings, reach out to me, see if there's anything that you might be interested in. So feel free to reach out to me directly. All right, any new certifications since we last met in March? Or anybody studying for anything? Anybody try one and fail? Which is a cause to celebrate.
Well, I have to own up to the fact that on this call, I said that I was going to have attempted a certification before this next call, and I did not do that. So I'm holding myself accountable to everybody, and going to try to get back on the wagon and make that happen before the next time. So yeah, just owning that. Owning that failure.
Ownership. That's what we're here
Daniel, I saw you come on camera. What do you got going on?
And he's
What's up? Sorry. What was that? How you doing?
Oh, nothing. I thought you were popping on video to tell us about another certification you managed to snag, but
no, I was just joining the team. But
awesome. Welcome. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, always good to see you, sir. All right. Okay. Prakash failed MuleSoft developer certification. There is none of those words in that sentence sounds easy.
No. Good for you.
Yeah, I mean.
Are you local, Prakash? Are you in KC? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm from India.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. That's awesome.
Do you have a timeline for retaking, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so actually, the exam seems like they have a lot of scenarios which actually requires some hands-on exercises, which I currently don't have. So I tried working with some more use case scenario and try hooking up with some of the guys who had some experience on MuleSoft development, and then I'll try next month again.
Yeah, all the different exams they're all unique, obviously content-wise, but in many ways all the same. That it's like there's the practical, but then there's the you need to have a little bit of dirt under your nails to really know how it looks and feels and tastes and smells. And good luck, you got this. Just keep hammering at it. You got this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'll definitely do it. Yeah.
Jeff, can you talk about the PD1 cert? What did you do to study?
Oh, I feel like I mostly got lucky. But no, what did I do to study? I'm a big believer in, okay, so like full disclosure, I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but like I've never paid for any sort of certification prep stuff. I feel like if Salesforce is going to give me the tools on Trailhead, then that's what they're looking for. So I spent a lot of time with the PD1 trail mixes, trying to look for the ones that are from Salesforce employees, especially because they're probably building those trail mixes as part of a proof of concept for the exam building, right? So otherwise, it's just about doing as much of the Apex, as many of the Apex modules as you can in real life in DevWorks, right? Like actually doing the work. That's really all I can say about it. I wish I had better advice, but it's been a while since I took it too. So candidly, I'm not 100% sure what I did. But
Was there, and this is for my edification as
Yeah.
well, was there any part of, as you were going through any of Trailhead and actually having to get your hands dirty, but coming from the admin and the declarative side of things,
Yeah.
what did you do to reduce the size of the mountain that is going from declarative to programmatic?
I sound like the company line, but like flows really helped me because uh, if you can learn flow, you're really learning a lot of the core like foundational elements of programming in a way in a maybe more approachable way. Um, and you can for me it was about translating in my head, right? Like, oh yeah, when they're telling me to do this, it really is like what I was doing over here in Flow, and so I could understand sort of where they were driving at. So I did a lot of Flow stuff before I ever got to true programming, or writing Apex or anything like that. And then I guess the other thing too, like the places that I've been have often had elements of Apex that I inherited that I just had to figure out, right? So like there's a certain amount of just real world experience, I guess, that you get thrown in the fire and it's like, okay, this thing broke and you have to figure it out because you're the only admin here. But yeah, I don't know. Let me look through, sort of go back through my Trailhead completed stuff and sort of see maybe if there's anything specific that I found that was really helpful. But I don't know. I spent a lot of time on the doc site too. I miss the old developers.salesforce.com. I feel like the new one is I'm sure it's just a who moved my cheese thing, but like I feel like it's a little harder to discover the kind of things that you used to be able to discover sort of incidentally.
Right.
But yeah, sorry, not great insight there, but
No, that's,
just get your hands dirty, right? Like just jump in and do as much of it as you can. That's all.
Nice. No, that I mean, that's good stuff. And I mean, of course, everybody thinks differently, everybody processes differently,
Sure.
but development, programmatic and declarative development aren't that much night and day difference. There is a lot of foundational commonality. So.
Yeah. And the other thing, Dale, is steal. That's what I do, right? Like go look at like unofficialsf.com where they're building lightning components for flows, and it's all open source. They have it all on GitHub, right? So go look at how they built it and go, oh, that's what they're doing. Or, oh, now this thing they were having me do in the module now makes sense because I'm seeing somebody actually build something with it in real life. So that really helps me also, like, just like I do with everything else, Salesforce, right? You start with a Google and you start with the people who have gone before you building it. And I don't know, that can be really valuable sometimes, especially with simple stuff, right? Like, when I wanted to build a lightning component for the first time, it's like, well, I probably built, 10% of it, and the rest of it was copied paste from whether it was lightning design system or whether it was, the component library or whatever. Like I'm not building it from scratch, right?
Nice. Very good.
Oh, Prakash, I totally understand what you're saying. In the chat, he's saying, if someone suggests just go to Trailhead and you'll pass, he says no. You do realize this is like someone who's never fished before asking how to catch a fish, and your response being just go to water. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Right.
There's a whole. It's probably I'm probably biased because before I ever got to the PD1 cert, I spent a lot of time in the ecosystem and was doing stuff in my day job that I didn't even realize was development, right? So you're totally right about that. That's a good call out.
Yeah, definitely. All right, good stuff. We'll zoom through the next couple of slides and then we'll hand it over to David. So MVP office hours as a community resource, myself, Joy Shutters Helbing in Chicago, and Squire Kirshner in Milwaukee. We normally do first and third Friday of the month. We're a little off schedule this month because of Good Friday, but bring your questions, be ready to answer questions, help others out. It's a great way to fix like in the weeds technical issues, but also great conversations and a lot of fun. And Kansas City actually tends to have a really good presence on those calls, which is definitely a lot of fun. So join us whether you need to participate or not. We'd love to have you. Also, I'm still going to say this is new in all caps and bold because it's only been going for a couple of months, but Flow office hours co-hosted by Terry Miller up in Des Moines. That is the second Friday of every month. So getting into Flow, especially with Flow replacing all other declarative automations here over the next couple of years, great opportunity to get help on Flow, whether it's immediate issues that you're trying to tackle or more concepts of how to use Flow. Definitely check that out. World Tour Salesforce events. I'm happy to see that those are moving more and more in person, so you can get information on all the Salesforce events at those series of links there, as well as webinars, trailhead.salesforce.com calendar. That not only has links to future events or to future webinars, but past ones as well that may have been recorded with a great filtering mechanism in case you aren't able to join live. And then the community-based events, those are popping back up in person. So they're led by the community with not nearly as much Salesforce oversight. So definitely great opportunities to connect with people at a considerably lower cost, to be honest. So check those out. Certification prep weeks, just go follow Danielle on the Success community. She's with Salesforce. She always has great updates and links to all things learning. The mentorship program I've talked about a ton. If you are looking to be a mentor or a mentee, it is a great opportunity and a great matching algorithm to really get you connected with people that are in a similar place as you, whether it be based on experience, gender, race, location, any of it. It's a great opportunity on both ends. And then the idea exchange, I don't think they're in an open prioritization window right now, but go follow that link to be able to jump in and help shape the future roadmap. Certification days I mentioned on the last slide, but upcoming training dates, I think we were in a wave of Europe and APAC based dates when we had our March 1st meeting, but things have now circled back to United States based. So those are all the US time zone based sessions that are coming up. There are also a handful of British time based ones, which I think GBR is, I think they're 5 hours ahead of us right now. So, you know, if you want to get started at 4 in the morning, more power to you. But there are US based ones. Some of them are Pacific, some of them are Eastern, but go check out the link up at the top there to get more information. And then of course, follow Danielle. They just released the calendar on the summer 22 release. So the blog is linked up there, and then the infographic of when things are going to happen. Thursday, you can start signing up for your pre-release orgs so that your sandboxes are ahead of the curve. Release notes next week, and then all the other things. Release weekends 5/20, 6/3, and 6/10. You can always go to status.salesforce.com and actually look at future maintenance windows to see when your org will be updated, whether it's your production org on either of those 3 weekends or your sandboxes. They have those planned out pretty far, so you can even see winter in, I think it's October, maybe even getting into spring next year. So keep that bookmarked. Certifications, we just had a deadline pass on, I think it was April 8th, so a week and a half ago. Hopefully everybody got theirs done, because the administrator, that's a big prerequisite to several other certifications. The next impending deadline is in August, which is definitely more niche, but you know, there are a lot of people who have any of those certifications. So August is the next one. And then PD1, Platform App Builder, a handful of others in December. I haven't actually clicked into it yet, but generally when they post that bottom row to say that it's available, it's available. So go do your admin renewal now. Just get it done, check it off your list. I'm going to imagine it's not going to take more than 15 or 20 minutes and you're good for the year. So there's no reason for you not to. Stay on top of those, because if you lose them, you know how hard you work to earn them. Probably not going to feel great to lose them. So just stay on top of it. So again, thank you to David and Ben from Prodly. They are going to jump in here in a minute with next-gen DevOps for admins and developers, and then a late add to the agenda. Chris Fees from Script Pro is going to show us everything he's undone that Jeff did when he was at Script Pro.
Don't say that.
It was no small task, let me tell you.
I know. I was saying before the call, I've never been the before in a before and after, so I'm a little terrified to see what Chris is.
No, this is net new, so you don't have anything to worry about.
Oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Okay, good. I don't have to freak out. That's great.
No, Chris is going to be showing us how he was able to use Flow Orchestrator at Script Pro. Again, going back to Flow replacing all the declarative automations. Orchestrator is a very powerful tool that may seem daunting, but Chris is going to break it down for us with a real world application of how he implemented it for Script Pro. So excited to have you on board as well.
And I'm just going to jump in real quick in case people don't make it all the way through Chris's presentation or have to jump off or whatever. Flow Orchestrator right now is GA, but everybody sort of knows that it's going to become a priced tool at some point. So you take the opportunity now to jump in on the sort of beta GA-ness of it all, because then you might be able to get grandfathered in when they add prices to it. So that's a great reason to stick around after Prodly for Chris's presentation, so you can learn how to maximize this tool while it's still free.
Good, very good call out. Yeah, if Salesforce can make some money off something, they absolutely will. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to David and Ben from Prodly. And one of you posted the raffle entry link in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and repost it in the WebEx chat. So go check that out. And thank you, gentlemen. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate the intro. And yeah, the link was posted in there, so please feel free to go in and get registered. We promise we won't spam you or anything, but want to make sure that you have the opportunity to win that $100 gift card. Typically, we do this live after the presentation's completed. Our marketing team unfortunately couldn't make it today, so we'll pull that, and then we'll either respond in the Slack channel or email the group. You know, whatever makes the most sense there, or I should say respond on the Trailblazer group itself. With that said, give me a thumbs up, Dale. I think I see you still. If you see my screen okay? All right, we're good. Perfect. So this is what we are going to kind of go through here today. We'll just kind of talk through what we classify as next generation DevOps, how you could be utilizing a tool like Prodly, you know, for yourselves and your orgs. To be able to move data and metadata, you know, up and down the chain. We don't restrict the flow of it. How you can use it just for simple seeding of sandboxes, you know, with real data, and then also how you can actually use it in some more complex low-code applications, such as CPQ, Field Service Lightning, you know, Conga, whatever it may be. These are the two folks, myself, and then also Ben Marshall, who's on. Ben, I think, came on video for a second and waved, but I know he's actually traveling today, so it's good that he's able to actually come on and join and be able to field some questions. So what we would encourage you all to do is to get as involved as possible, to be able to come on and come off mute, I should say, and ask some questions. If you wouldn't like to do that, you can always just respond in the chat. Ben's going to be managing the chat. He is a sales guy by nature, but he's slightly more technical than me. And so I think he'll be a great resource for you if you did have some questions and wanted to ping them in the chat. He will absolutely be watching that while we kind of go through this presentation. Myself, I am new to this partnerships and alliances role. So prior to April 1st of 2022, I spent the last year at Prodly as an account executive. Ben and I were counterparts. Essentially, he worked with companies less than 2,500 employees I worked with companies greater than 2,500 employees. And then here recently, like I said, I took over this Director of Partnerships and Alliances role. So shameless plug, if there are any partners on the call, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to be able to talk to you about what this program is all about and how you can get access to our tool, complimentary. And yep, go ahead, Ben. It looks like you said I wasn't, the screen didn't advance.
Yeah,
is that right?
it's still on your title slide right now.
Okay. Well, I'm going through it. I am advancing it. That's not ideal, of course. Give me just a second here, and we'll see what happens. All right. How about now? That advanced?
That's better. That's better. Yeah.
Yep.
Can you see our pretty faces? All right, perfect. That's good. So as I was just kind of mentioning, right, I lead the director of the partnership channel here at Prodly. Ben works in sales as an account executive with our end user clients. Did this screen advance to the evolution of DevOps?
We see the headline.
Okay,
of it.
perfect.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
you're
all.
good.
That's
You're good. It's
good. All
working
right,
now.
we're
It's
good
working.
then. All right, want to make sure that we're okay. So what we're gonna do is we'll talk real quick. We'll paint a picture on this call here today of why we exist, right? So we'll talk a little bit about the evolution of DevOps, and then what we'll do on the back end is just kind of go through a demo, right? We'll walk you through how to use it, what our interface looks like, so on and so forth. So as you can kind of see, as we go through, the beginning of this, right? Salesforce out of the box sort of came around roughly, turn of the century, 99, 2000-ish. And, the issue was there, hey, it's exciting, right? It's this new intro into the SaaS world. It's built for everybody though. And then, as we kind of saw this progression go through it, we started to see how things started to get opened up and developers were able to come in and start to make customizations, right? So it started in its infancy and then started to develop. Salesforce is continuing to evolve, as we all know. But with that, it started to create some challenges around metadata. And with that, it became paramount and evident that we were going to start to see some of these legacy metadata solutions that actually came about, right? So the Capados, Flowsims, AutoRabbits, GearSets, so on and so forth. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with them. A lot of you are probably using them in your orgs. We'll talk about some of the pros and cons here as well as we move through it. Now, Salesforce made some changes to clicks, not code, declarative development, and that really introduced a new challenge of data and what to do with it, right? So this highly relational data that existed, and that's essentially how we were born, right? So you can see like the clicks, not code mentality, declarative development coming, and with that, Prodly Mover essentially came about, right? So it's important to note that with Prodly, right, we are founded, our CEO and founder, Max Rudman, is the founder of Steelbrick, which then became Salesforce CPQ and Revenue Cloud. So we're really born out of that idea of being able to move this highly relational declarative data. And that's really, again, what we do best, right? That configuration data piece. Now, as Salesforce evolved, Prodly evolved, right? We had the ability to go from what was essentially just being able to move data to being able to move data up and down the chain, right? We don't restrict the flow of data. You can version data now with our tools, so we continue to progress and add new features and functionality. But over the last couple of years, we've recognized, hey, there's this need still for these legacy DevOps solutions to be able to move the metadata. And so we've actually developed another tool now to actually be able to move your metadata as well. So a lot of what you can do with a change set, if you're using change sets currently, Prodly is now, we believe, a really capable one-stop shop to move your data and metadata within Salesforce. Now, I'm going to ask if anyone is using a legacy DevOps solution, right? Some of the ones that we just took a look at, the Capados of the world, the GearSet, so on and so forth. And we can make this somewhat rhetorical, or you can feel free to just kind of respond in the chat. We'd love to know if folks are using these and kind of your thoughts on it. So please feel free to have that sort of open dialogue in that chat. Ben will always kind of chime in. A side note here, I can't see the chat, or I don't see, oh, here we go. Let me make sure I can pull this up now. So I can see the chat now. So yeah, like I said, feel free to come in and just kind of, you can take yourself off mute, or again, feel free to come in and actually, type some things in the chat if you have experience with legacy DevOps tools. The issue a lot of folks find with these, especially some of the folks probably that are on the call, since this isn't a developer group, is that the legacy DevOps tools are built for developers, right? So the UI a lot of times is unfriendly. There's way too much functionality, so like overly robust tools, things that you're paying for that you don't quite need. Sometimes up to like 90% of the tool that you may not actually be needing or leveraging. And then a lot of times too, it takes too long to get installed into your org. That's another complaint that we hear. Now, the other thing, and kind of the competitor, so to speak, to these legacy DevOps solutions are change sets. So I would ask the same question: are any of the folks on the call familiar with, or are they leveraging change sets? And one of the things that we hear quite a bit about is that, when a lot of people are working in one org and making changes, this becomes really cumbersome. So I see that Jeff had mentioned, yeah, unfortunately, he's using change sets. Anybody that's used them before knows that, Salesforce hasn't really done much with them since its inception. And they've been, again, very difficult to leverage and very cumbersome. So that's something to think about just on like the metadata side, right? And some of the challenges that kind of exist. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the demo itself. You can see, again, just some of the things that, some of the challenges here, we kind of list this out, right? Some of the things that exist on the DevOps side, again, very long implementations, big learning curve, essentially something that you're going to just be seeing, developers leveraging in that. Whereas Prodly really takes aim at making folks the citizen developers, so really empowering admins and less technical folks to be able to essentially do these full deployments. And then, of course, some of the things on the change set side, right? If you're using them and you love them, great. Most of the people I talk to don't love them, but if that's the case, you can just see again some of the issues here that kind of surround using change sets. Now, data, right? This is our bread and butter, so we'll spend some time talking about this. But is anyone out there using a data tool to actually move your data, right? Your configuration data, your record data, so on and so forth, and taking away from metadata completely, but really just focusing on that data. And then, is that tool data loader, right? Salesforce Inspector, I see somebody chiming in on there. A lot of folks are using data loader, and that's going to be really common. I'm sure I'm seeing more and more people in the chat, talk about using data loader. A lot of people have familiarity with data loader, and while that's worked for a really long time, probably there are definitely issues with that as well. So you can kind of see on the left-hand side, which typically this has been the only real way to move data, right? Some of the legacy DevOps solutions are starting to get more involved in it, but again, it's not quite as mature of what we have to offer, and I'll kind of showcase this moving forward here. The data loader can be incredibly time consuming, right, for the folks that are leveraging it. A lot of manual org IDs and VLOOKUPs that exist within it. Having to move one object at a time, that's never fun either, especially when dealing with some of those more complex low-code apps. Becomes very, very challenging. I saw some folks talking about bulk APIs as well. So again, just these manual processes that exist in moving data. You say free. I like the term that Chris used, right? The free one. Hey, I totally recognize that some of these tools, are free, but what about the time and the resources that go into being able to leverage these, and how it kind of pulls you in different directions. And of course, if there's any mistakes that are made, having to go back and duplicate work is never fun either, right? Free is never free. I love what Dale just said. That's kind of what I was getting at there. So I'm glad people are starting to kind of recognize that, right? And this is really sort of a comparison between Prodly AppOps, our next generation DevOps solution, legacy DevOps tools, and then status quo, right? The change sets and the data loaders of the world. We're really purpose-built for anyone involved in Salesforce and where your workflow is at today. So from analyst to admin to developers, really no matter what your release path looks like, we can support you there. And we also got our start on the data migration side. So we have a lot of advanced capabilities to keep your data in order and clean as you migrate it. Now, also plenty of visual tools to see how your metadata is changing between orgs, which makes it super simple to select what you want to migrate. And we can get you up and running in about an hour. So this is the other thing that is really fantastic in terms of being able to actually get us implemented. There's no implementation time. We're a managed package. We sit inside your Salesforce org. Very simple to install and get used to. We've heard other stories of customers spending months, if not longer, to implement. And that's just not the case with us. You can be up and running, and like I said, in about an hour, you'll actually be able to start running those full deployments. And this is really what that managed package looks like, right? When you install Prodly, we then get installed into your production org. You can install us anywhere. We recommend production just because you're not going to accidentally delete us out. You're not going to refresh it and make these changes and have to then reinstall Prodly time and again. Once you install us, we then become that control org. And from there, we actually can deploy, again, to and from, across, however you'd like to do, up and down the chain, right, from source to destination, back up to source. Doesn't matter. You could go sandbox to sandbox. You can use this to seed scratch orgs, dev boxes, and we'll show you what that looks like when we get to the demo. You can actually deploy from the source org to up to 5 destination orgs simultaneously. Kind of showcase that feature also. And everything passes through our table here in the cloud. And it's important to note, and we'll talk about this, we don't actually store any identifiable data. We use a proprietary virtual external ID, which will replace the old method of having to use those manual external IDs and also VLOOKUPs in Excel that we all probably love so much. So that's essentially it, right, in terms of what the package looks like and how we get installed. We'll take a look at, again, the demo and actually kind of start to play around in this tool here on the back end of this. The last thing I want to show you, and I know this has been put into the chat, we do have a drawing that we'll do. So again, if you haven't already, please feel free to enter in your information here. We'd love to be able to get out that $100 gift card just as a thank you for allowing us to come on and be able to talk with you about this. And of course, if there's anything that you need, I'll feel free. Actually, Ben, if you wouldn't mind maybe dropping our contact information into the chat, you'll have that, our email addresses, so on and so forth. You can feel free to respond or reach out to us individually. And we'd love to talk to you about how we can support your organizations, your teams, and certainly take a lot of the time and that some of the difficulties and burdens off of your plate with having to use some of those manual processes. So at this point, I'll pause. Any questions on what we looked at here on this deck before we actually hop into the demo?
Demo time.
Demo time. Let's do it. All right. So this essentially is the Salesforce deployment dashboard. All right. And I will say that it looks like Salesforce because it is Salesforce, right? As I mentioned before, we sit inside your Salesforce org, which makes it really simple for you to use, right? There's no real learning curve. I know a lot of people talk quite a bit about, what the ease of use or functionality of their tools, just that's vendor jargon, right? We hear that a lot, but I really can't stress that enough on our end in terms of this particular tool with just how easy it is to actually leverage. And again, from a user interface perspective, I mean, this is exactly what you're seeing. Everything has been installed, into this org here. So the first thing I'm going to do is we'll talk a little bit about, go to this AppOps release tab here. We'll talk a little bit about environment management. So one of our use cases is to be able to keep your environments in order, keep them, really nice, neat, and organized, and be able to very simply seed any of these lower environments with just a couple of clicks of a button. So as you can see here, I have my production org, which is my control org. I have a staging and a demo sandbox we'll be working out of a little bit. I also have some dev boxes here. A great use case for us is to not make you have to use these full and partial copy sandboxes, right? So full copy sandboxes in Salesforce are not cheap. We talked a little bit about free, right, earlier. Dale said free is never free. Well, I mean, this is one way that we can offset cost is you don't have to work out of these as often anymore, and everybody can have their own workspace, right? So people aren't having to be cluttered in and, being able to essentially step on each other's toes in a shared workspace. Everybody can work out of their normal sandbox, right? Their regular sandbox, whatever they'd like to work out of. You know, a lot of folks have access to multiple dev boxes that they're not using. We can essentially help you use these dev boxes as you would be using a full copy or partial copy sandbox. So a great way there to just think about, you know, how you can be potentially saving some time and resources and of course money, which is important. Very simple to add environments just by coming up and clicking here. We use standard Salesforce security protocols, so all authentication. All you have to do is add the environment, authenticate it, and go on from there. Now, as far as our partners on the call, if there are any partners, as I said, I work with them quite a bit. This can be really beneficial for end users as well, but just a way to be able to group these. Let's say you have specific projects or engagements, you can simply come in and group these up here as well to make sure, again, you kind of keep everything in order. Just a way to track everything and, you know, be a little bit more organized in your environments here. Now, as I mentioned before, we can seed up to 5 of these dev boxes at once. I'll show you what that looks like here. We can come in and go into our source and our destination. And again, I mentioned we can select up to 5, and we can actually do this simultaneously by using a specific data set, which is a pre-built template defining what data to move. And I'll show you what these data sets look like here shortly. For now, I'll just go ahead and select the one we want, which is a specific demo seeding account data set. We'll take a look at what this looks like here on the back end of this. I want to get this deployment kicked off here quick, and I want to be able to showcase how we can actually kick off a deployment and let that run in the background while we go back to work on things a little bit more strategically on the foreground, which is another great use case of what Prodly can do for you. Once you come in here, you can see we'll give it a deployment name. It automatically populates to the date and time of the deployment. You can obviously change that to whatever you would like, and then just be able to click the blue button here, which then kicks off that deployment, and you'll see that green check and letting you know here in the deployment history that these have been submitted and are ready to start deploying. Any questions on that before we hop over and take a look at metadata? Great. And like I said, please feel free to use the chat. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just pretty slick.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Anything that you need as far as like being able to chime in. Like I said, please feel free to come off mute. We want to make it interactive. I'll definitely pause and ask a lot of questions to see if you all would be interested in engaging. And again, if not, that's fine. Just feel free to use the chat if you can too. Ben is in there manning that for us. So this is what this metadata piece looks like, right? So we pretty easily navigated from seeding sandboxes here to the guided deployment. I already have metadata preloaded. Now the reason why is metadata takes a minute or two to preload. And the reason why is because it actually parses through all of the metadata in your source and destination. Now, whenever we do this, it's going to come up with a really nice, slick diff view here, which is going to list out all of the metadata components and types that are associated with it. Now, before I get into this, I actually typically showcase this, but let me show you the metadata here, components and types that we actually support, just so you're aware of this, right? So here's a list right here of all of the supported metadata components and types. Now, you'll see that, you know, there's probably several that you're using. Again, most of what you would use for a change set. And we recognize there are, of course, going to be some things on here that you don't see yet. So it's important to note that we are not necessarily a metadata company, right? We've started to use this tool to be able to deploy metadata as well, again, to be kind of that one-stop shop for these deployments. But this list is continuing to grow. So one of the big focuses for our company is to be able to add more and more functionality, components and types to metadata. That is a massive focus. So with every release, that continues to grow. So this list has grown since our last release, and I'm happy to say that coming up here with our spring of 2022 release, which should be in the next few weeks, you'll see Lightning Web Components, assignment rules, compact layouts, and custom metadata types also be added to this list. So as Ben mentioned, Lightning Web Components and Aura as well, coming in that release there in May. Now, as we bounce back to it, again, you'll be able to see this diff view here. From here, you can click into it, right, and actually see some of the things that we've added to this, we can drill down and get very deep into it. One of the things that you'll see with the diff view is that you'll see these color-coded bubbles on the right-hand side. And from there, we can actually filter this out a little bit, right? So it's going to show anything in green that is just in the source, so net new, things that were added in the source that aren't yet in the destination. We still need to promote that up. It's going to show you things in blue where the value differs from the source to the destination, so maybe we made a change. And then things in red, right? Things that are just in the destination, they've been deleted out of the source. You can actually filter this and drill down if you like to just select one of these colors to make it, again, a little bit easier to work out of. You can also see and filter this out by last modified by, right? So if you just wanted to see things that I made, you could click that as well, and that would drill down a little bit deeper, and you could then see just things that, changes that yourself made or whomever actually made those changes. Now, the other thing you can do to get a little bit more granular is our comparison views. So we have a few that are in here that are just used essentially as templates, right? You can sort things out by objects, permission sets, profiles, objects, flows, workflow rules, whatever it may be. Really nice, easy function here as well. You can also create a comparison view if you're using certain metadata components and subcomponents and types that aren't included here. You can be able to create that comparison view as well. Again, just helps you get a little bit more granular there. Now, as we go through it, we can click into one of these and we can actually take a look at what one would look like. Let's say, for instance, we wanted to see, here's one that I actually did recently. I haven't updated it yet, but one that we did recently for Austin's user group. We created an object in a sandbox, and we can kind of showcase what that would ultimately look like and take a look at some of the subcomponents here as well. As the metadata is fetching, now it has been successful. You'll see the subcomponents will come up here also. So again, you can be able to drill down into this and get a little bit deeper if you'd like. What you can also do is you can see now the side-by-side diff view that comes up, right? So you can see very easily what we changed in the sandbox. So again, we created this net new essentially object here. The values are listed out. It's not in the destination yet, right? So it's not going to showcase anything. Had they been there next to each other, of course, we would be able to see, what those look like side by side here as well. Now, from here, you can really easily deploy data as well, right? You can just click this on. We've already done a sandbox seeding, so it might not be necessary to actually deploy any data at this point. From here, all you have to do is select these checkboxes, right? If you wanted to move these metadata types, whatever you wanted to move, you can select and then come down to click deploy. Now from there, you could of course give it, a name. Again, that's going through just governance sake, going to appear with the date and time that we actually schedule this deployment, and then be able to come in and click deploy there, which would then run that metadata deployment as well. The last thing I'll show you on this, we do have the ability to do validation testing. So if you wanted to run, local tests specifically, you could do all tests or no tests. You could also select whatever the default you would like to. Whenever that default is selected, when you click deploy, it will automatically run that validation in the back end. So that's essentially what the metadata components look like. That's what our diff view and our side-by-side diff view looks like. Here's we can kind of drill down. You can see just how easy it is to follow, right? There's not a lot of scripts, not a lot of code. It's just pretty simple, point and click. Anybody essentially can do this, right? I always tell people that I'm not technical. I'm really just a sales guy at heart, right? And I can do these deployments pretty simply. So again, folks that have a little bit of a Salesforce background, no matter the level of technical background that you all have, very simple, very easy to get in and use this. So any other metadata questions here before we move on and go back and kind of focus on some more of the data components? Can we select which VC to use? Okay, so we do integrate with version control systems. I just happened to see this question, right? We do integrate for version control systems on the data side. We work with GitHub, Bitbucket, and Azure. However, we don't on the metadata side. So that is something important to note. Now, I will tell you that, one of the big releases from Salesforce will be Salesforce DevOps Center. That's something that's coming. some of you may be familiar with it, some of you may not be. They do have the ability to actually work with version control systems. So the VCSs that you're kind of thinking about, we are going to be a great complement to that tool, we believe. But again, as far as our tool here, not going to work for the metadata side. You can, and of course, as we mentioned, and Ben has kind of doubled down on there in the chat, you can use us for data if you were interested in versioning data that way. Gives you that rollback point, really nice feature. Now, coming up to data sets, right? We talked a little bit about this at the beginning. We kind of breezed through it when we actually did that sandbox seeding. But again, what data sets are essentially pre-built templates that are going to define what data you're deploying, okay? Now, as you can see here, we have lots and lots of these templates. And these templates go from pretty much any custom or whatever complex application, low-code application that you have that exists within Salesforce, such as like B2B commerce, billing, Conga, right? Any of your CLM needs there, field service lightning. I know we talked about CPQ a little bit on the front end of this because, again, that's essentially what we were born out of. Sales and Service Cloud, here's all your CPQ templates, right? And all of these essentially house all of the objects that are scheduled, to move in between these deployments. So we can click into one of these and you can actually see what these look like here. I'll click into this demo seeding account. Now, really simple too, if you would like to build a new one, right? Our CS team will actually help you, with this. So I know there are probably some finance folks that are maybe using Encino, might be using Financial Force, so on and so forth. Well, we have the ability to really simply just click new on that last page and actually click into that and actually create a new data set for you that you'd like to be able to leverage. Now, we'll see what the schema view looks like. So one of the great things about this tool is you don't have to be a schema expert. We kind of do that for you. So this is a really simple one just for opportunities, cases, and contacts, everything pointing up to account. But again, gives you the ability to leverage this tool for that as well. If you wanted to add to it, you could do that very simply, and I'll kind of showcase that here in just a second. Now, as we come in, we can actually see any of your object, standard, or custom, anything that exists within force.com, essentially. Now, once you select the deployment object, that's going to essentially become your root object. From there, you can actually see all of the different deployment objects that can exist, right? So you can select any of these to help you kind of build out these data sets. And from there, you can see all of the available object fields, parent and child relationships that are, affiliated with it, right, or associated with that specifically. Now here, you can simply come in and select the checkbox on the left-hand side, and that's going to add that into the data set itself, right? So from there, it's going to add a hyperlink, as we did here with case and contact. Once that hyperlink is added, now we can drill down into that and get a little bit more granular. From here, we can see all of the available parent and child relationships, as well as all of the available object fields that are related to that. Now, I'll pause here and I want to make sure we're good on time again. I know Ben had just kind of messaged me asking about a time check. I don't have a lot more to go, probably about another 5-6 minutes. Dale and team, does that sound?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're good. You're
okay, good.
Keep on
right,
talking.
good.
Yep.
Wanted to make sure that we were good there. I thought we were, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I'd say another 10 minutes probably still.
10 minutes, perfect, perfect. So what we're seeing here, right, on the objects that exist within this data set, right? So these are all the object fields here that we can actually play with. One of the things that we can do is obfuscate or scramble data. And so just by one click of a button, let's say first name was something that was sensitive for you all and you wanted to make sure that you had that protected, you could come in and select this checkbox here to assign a random value. And what that's going to do is pull real data into that sandbox as you seed it. It actually doesn't replace it with anything that's super scrambled. It would just simply replace a real name with another real name, right? So instead of David Heck for me, it might be Chris Heck, right? It would actually just replace that with a repository of names that we have, which would then scramble that. And you can do this for tax ID or email or address or whatever it may be that is sensitive or protected data for you. The other thing we can do is, we've heard some horror stories about this in the past, but folks accidentally emailing their entire contact list whenever working in a lower environment. We can mitigate against that by coming in and entering in a prefix or a postfix value, like a dot invalid after the email address, which will then make sure that that doesn't happen. And the last thing I'll show you on the data set side, we'll just follow this breadcrumb trail up to account. It's very nice because as you drill down deeper and deeper into that, that breadcrumb trail will just continue to grow and allow you to just easily kind of navigate between, you know, different elements here. But we'll go back to element details. We'll talk about our record selection criteria here. You can actually filter this out and make sure that you're not blowing through org limits a couple of ways. So the first would be through this query filter here, right? Essentially a SOQL where clause. You can sort this, filter this out by any unique identifier, such as last modified by date, whatever it may be. The other thing you can do is, let's say you've made a few changes and you only want to bring over a couple of objects or records, I should say. You can select the exact number of records that you want to migrate over, you know, be that 10, 100, 500, 1,000, whatever that number is, right? It'll just bring over the first however many to, again, make sure you're not blowing through any of those org limits there. So appreciate, you know, again, all the questions we're getting. Appreciate you, Ben, for responding to it. Again, if there's any questions, feel free to chime in there and continue to ask that in the chat. What I'm going to do now is hop into deployment results, and we'll take a look at what we kicked off a little bit earlier. So when I hop into this, there's a couple of ways to get here. This is probably the easiest, just a tab here at the top. What we'll see now is our first you know, look at an audit trail, right? So it's really important to actually take a look at like what the audit trail looks like. I think that that's really important. You know, you're going to probably, you know, need some of this, and it's, again, another great feature to be able to leverage this tool as opposed to having to do this all manually. Now, when we click into it, we can get a little bit more granular here. So I'll wait for this to load and we'll talk through a little bit of it. All right, and so now that this loaded up, this is actually going to be our deployment results tab. So you're actually going to be able to see this come through in real time as you'd like. Now, we're actually able to see it in action here as you'll see the screen go from green going from left to right across the top of the screen here. You also get into our deployment batch results, shows all of the records processed, you know, all the succeeded records. There's nothing that's failed in this, but if there had been a failed record, you would get this little icon here that would pop up, and, you know, of course, these won't be green check boxes. Now, it's really important to note that the Prodly release tool is always configured to do an upsert method, which is both an update and an insert with every deployment. And the way that we're able to do this and ensure that no duplicates are created, I talked a little bit about this on the front end, but it's through our proprietary method of our virtual external ID. And our virtual external ID is essentially going to replace your old method of having to use manual external IDs or having to use VLOOKUPs in Excel. Now, when you make a deployment for the first time, and you kick this off through Prodly, we're going to keep a copy of the record IDs that have been deployed in our cloud, and that every time you kick the release tool off in the future, we're then configured to first look at the schema in both the source and the destination, as well as the data that we're preparing to move. And prior to moving any of that data, our tool then looks at the record IDs in the source and compares those against our table in the cloud. If they've been deployed before, the tool will recognize the ID and simply update the operation. If they've never seen the ID before and this is a new record, we'll simply insert the record into the destination. So here, nothing was inserted, everything was just updated. We just did a quick, simple data seed here to kind of refresh some of the data. It's important to note, though, that Prodly doesn't store any identifiable data, only the record ID, virtual external IDs, and org IDs. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you here is more of a granular approach to this audit trail. We'll click into the actual deployment data set results, and you're going to notice the results here. You're going to see these results in a few key areas. Once this loads, the first will be on the left-hand side, and this is going to be essentially show you the data set used, who kicked it off, when they kicked it off, how many records were deployed, so on and so forth. You can see we Did this in about 3, almost 4 minutes, I guess, the deployment itself took. But again, really nice that we were able to work on other things. We're able to do other things while this deployment is running on the back end. The second thing you'll be able to see here is our batch results, going to show you the object and the operation, similar to what we took a look at here earlier on that last screen. And then the bottom is going to be our most granular individual record results. It's going to showcase the source and destination record links of the deployment. And if there had been any errors, if there were errors, you would see an error column pop up here, similar to probably what you would see with Data Loader. The other nice thing about this is the destination record URL would be blank, and that will make troubleshooting really easily, right? It will allow you to just go in here, very quickly see what failed, and then be able to fix it, and then just simply rerun that data set, rerun that deployment. And that's essentially it on the data side, to be able to showcase like the data seeding component. Now, of course, we could spend a lot more time and go through individually these data sets that exist, right? We could take a look at specific use cases around field service lightning, around Conga, around CPQ, B2B commerce, and show you how we actually promote data back up. You know, trust me, that's a great use case for us, and arguably the best use case for us, right, is to be able to do that, because it's super difficult to be able to, it's super complex to be able to do that with all the relational data and objects that exist within each one of these data sets themselves. But again, that's a conversation perhaps for another day. So I want to thank you all, you know, for giving us the opportunity to come on and talk to you about the product. We're really excited about it. You know, and I think that, again, folks that are doing this stuff manually, it just doesn't necessarily have to be that way anymore, right? We're a great tool, and we'd love to be able to talk to you how we can support you as an end user client. And again, as a partner, right, that exists. We have an amazing partnership program that we allow you to leverage this tool. You know, I lead that department here internally. Please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have that conversation with you as well. And as Dale just pinged in there, don't forget to sign up for that gift card raffle. We'd love to be able to connect with you. Hopefully, you know, good luck to all of you for signing up for that. You know, but hopefully, again, we can connect and we can kind of look at some of these specific use cases, right, and how we can support more of your specific needs here in the future. So thanks again, everybody. If there's any other questions, feel free to ask. You know, again, we really appreciate the time.
Awesome, David. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. I want to give folks a minute more, 30 seconds more to come off mute and ask questions now that they've seen the full demo. Big thanks to Ben for running the chat and answering everybody's questions in there. Thank you for that. Any more questions before we transition to Chris? Awesome. There he is. Cool. Well, again, big thanks to David, big thanks to Ben, big thanks to Prodly. Really, really appreciate y'all being here today, supporting the user group, and sharing what you have to offer. I know there were a lot of questions in the chat, so I think we've got some really interested parties on the line. Want to transition over to Chris. Chris Fees. First of all, I just want to say, Chris filled out that speaker interest form. So Dale mentioned the speaker interest form earlier on in the session, and big thanks to Chris for reaching out and offering up something to present to the community. And if you want to present at an upcoming user group event, do not hesitate to fill out that speaker interest form. We would love to have you. Dale recommended that I introduce Chris because he took over at my old stomping grounds over at Script Pro. Chris, do you want to start sharing your screen?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Chris is the Salesforce administrator over at Script Pro. He had the unfortunate luck to follow me and try to clean up the mess that I made over there at Script Pro. And I know firsthand the kind of uphill battle Chris had over at Script Pro in terms of Salesforce adoption and getting folks on board. So I'm really, really excited and intrigued to see what he's built using this incredibly powerful tool, Salesforce Orchestrator, Flow Orchestrator. So without further ado, Chris, welcome to the user group. Thanks for presenting, and take it away.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jeff. And you were always very hard on yourself in your description. I think you know, It is a challenge sometimes. Script Pro. I want to move fast. I don't know. I think you're kind of a fast mover too, and sometimes the businesses, they like how they've been doing things. So that is absolutely a challenge. But I don't think you can say that it's all your fault or something like that. I think you're
Well,
appreciated there.
I take extra responsibility because Script Pro is the first and only time that I've had the luxury, but also the challenge of standing up an org from scratch. And so, unlike other orgs that I've inherited in the past, there's nowhere else to point the finger other than back at myself if I didn't like something that I built. So,
Yeah.
definitely taught me a lot about documentation or lack thereof, and being good about remembering where you put things because I'm used to coming in later, right? And having to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, without further ado, I'll let you.
Yeah,
Speak.
no, it's been great.
Appreciate
And
it.
I'll do just a little quick background on myself.
Yeah.
I started with Salesforce back in 2014. Prior to that, my background was in civil engineering. And so I got into Salesforce in a role of a sales engineer at first. And then, like many of you, perhaps it was, oh, the guy who runs our Salesforce is gone. Who is best suited to pick that up? And so sort of took over that role just to help the sales department be successful. That was really my aim. And I think I would say I probably still have a little bit of that bent of like, why are we doing this? How does this help our customers? How does this, how does what we're building make our product better and help our team? And, in terms of better sales and happier customers. And if it doesn't do that, then why are we doing this? So that's a bit of my background. I have had the chance, like Jeff was saying, I've actually had the opportunity to stand up orgs at a couple different companies, and then I've also had a couple companies where it's you take over for what someone else built, and you're trying to figure out like what was going on here. Today, as the folks mentioned, I had just thought that you all might be interested in seeing Flow and specifically Flow Orchestrator. I have a test case that we are launching right now for our contracts team and our quotes team. And so what I had previously done, and I'm showing you a screen now of a quote record. And in our first iteration of this, we had launched to our quotes team. So prior to this team, the quotes team was responsible for getting requests from sales folks, and then they would build out the pricing documents and then give them back to the quotes team. And there's a lot of email, back and forth. Oh, hey, you forgot to give me this. Oh, sorry, here it is, right? And things kind of, when you're not managing it, can get lost. So we said, well, let's use Salesforce for that. Let's bring in our quotes team into Salesforce and let's formalize this process. And so to do that, we used approval processes. I'll take a quick pause. Have you used approval process in the past, or do any of you use the Salesforce approval process functionality right now?
Much to my chagrin, we use the approval processes pretty
Yes.
heavily. I feel like every time a Dreamforce rolls around, there's inevitably a question at True to the Core about when they're going to do anything with approval processes because they haven't been touched in what feels like a decade. So, I'm a proud and pained approval process user.
So, okay, that's my exact read on things. And so when I was doing some research into, it was either the spring update, one of the recent updates, it said, hey, Flow Orchestrator, and this could, potentially be used for this function. I thought, oh, okay, well, let me look into that. And so I'll do just a quick demo of what it does, and then we can go. I've got two different approval processes, one simpler, one more complex. The quotes team being the simpler one. So I'll show you that first and then maybe get over into the flow orchestration so you guys can see it. And then if we have time, we can do the more complex one and you can see that. So similar to what we had previously been using for approval processes, now the quotes team review has been transitioned over into using Flow. So there's no more approval process, there's no more workflow rules, there's no more email templates. All of that sort of old stuff can go away now, which I am excited about. It kicks off by the sales rep setting the status into quotes team review. and then that triggers the orchestration. And the first step is assigned to the review user. So I guess I should show in how do I know who's the quote team user, and how do you control how this work item that we just saw kicks off. So you saw that this little box popped open. It's called the work guide, and it's a lightning screen component. The reason that it turned on is because I have a background process that I'll show you in a minute that checks a little box to say I'm in an orchestration. And when that becomes true, this work guide pops open. I am defining then who is assigned that work in the section of public groups, which some of you may have used before. But I can define who the members of the group are in this area, and then when that flow triggers, it recognizes, in this case, I am one of those users, and I'm being directed to choose to take ownership of this quote review. Pause there for a second. Any questions on that so far? Is that making sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay. So then this is a screen flow that the orchestrator has called, and it's recognizing who am I, and we have not assigned a reviewer yet. Again, the purpose of this would be there's many people on the team, but we only want one of them to do the review. So when I hit next, it's going to progress through that screen flow, and you'll see if I refresh this tab that I have now been assigned here. So the flow is taking information out of what's going on and then able to populate various fields. This submitted for quotes review, you see, also was tagged at 1219. And so from here, I'm just going to do my review. I'm going to say looks great and approve that. And then what's going to happen at the end of this is that comment then is going to be placed in Chatter, and you see it tags the owner of this record. And actually, I probably need to refresh this to see that recent one. So that this way I kind of get away from having to do those emails and all the email templates, because I'm just using the Chatter update, tagging the person in that. And then there's my comment right there. It looks great. So my reviewer will get that email from the system, which saves me having to build out a bunch of different templates. So that is the simpler one. I can jump over. Again, guys, interrupt. I didn't say at the front. Please interrupt me any questions you have. This can be very interactive as you all like. But what we just did there is this simple path of the quote orchestration. So you'll see that there's actually 3 different flows that were involved in that. And the orchestrator, I guess I can show you here. When you're trying to add components into an orchestration, it's fairly limited. It's not like a flow itself where you can do a bunch of tests and comparing things. You can basically just put decisions and then stages, which stages are where you put your calling of the flow. So the way it's well named, I suppose you'd say. The orchestration is orchestrating what's going on. You don't do a lot of the work in the orchestration, but rather you're calling flows, and then the flows either are background flows, like this first one I call, that does something in the background, or they are screen flows that ask something of the user. And then you would specify when you call that screen flow, who is the user that should be doing this screen flow. And as I mentioned before, I could call a group. You could also assign it to an individual if you have a simpler case than that. But for us, groups was the way to go. So pause again.
So Chris, if I can jump in, I want to ask a question. When your point is really well taken about the orchestrator being where the orchestration happens, right, and not where the work of building the flows happen. So when it comes to like building this, starting from scratch, right, and like I want to build an orchestration, would you say that the order of operations is sort of defining each individual flow first, and you have to build out each unique flow? Or did you find when you were building this that you had sort of a sense of where you wanted to go, maybe you built 1 or 2 flows to get started, and then it was kind of back and forth between, oh shoot, I need this step, so I'm going to go build this flow, and then I'm going to add it to my orchestration? Can you speak a little bit to that process and actually building this out?
Yeah, great point. I would say this probably depends on the person a bit. I'm more of the second style of I have a general idea where I'm going, and then I want to just go and start running it and then add as I go. Before I got into this, I found a few videos on YouTube of people building orchestrations, and one of the pieces of advice there that I also took was start off with one of these background flows and have it mark. I guess I can show you what this actually is. So naming scheme is helpful in this space. The numbers aren't always meaningful, but there are numbers. So 1.2 goes to 1.2. And all this background flow does is it sets fields on my quote object, in particular, this field in orchestration. And so that was useful for me to pull that idea off of that other gentleman. That's at the beginning of the orchestration, you tell the record you're in an orchestration right now. And then when you get all finished with everything, the last thing you do is tell the record you're not in an orchestration anymore. That was super helpful to kind of have that idea. But yeah, I would say if your working style is like mine, plan to have a background flow that tells the record it's in a flow. Then you're going to have some kind of screen flows that you'll progress through. Then you're going to have one background flow at the end that sets it back across. And if you started there, you probably wouldn't be in a bad spot.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. With a tool like this, it's really easy to get overwhelmed with all of the possible paths, right? And so I think what you're saying really hits home, right? Like start with a really simple, basic scenario, pick a background step and an interactive step, and just build that, right? And then you can add more stuff later. But if you try to ready, aim, fire for too long, you're just going to be sitting there, with 100 flows in your sandbox, and nobody's ever even used the thing in real life, so you don't even know how it works. So I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, agreed. Any others, or otherwise if we have time, I can jump into the slightly more complicated one and show you.
Hey, we have a question from the chat, Chris, if you can speak to this. It says, in an approval process, there's a handy widget that tells the user that they are the current approver. How do you alert the user that they are holding up the process with this quote flow approval process?
Yeah, good question. So that has to do with, back to my page here, with what we saw. I'll just do it again, actually, so you guys can see. So you'll notice now when I go back into quotes team review, right? This is kind of like the first one, except there's something different. The first time, there wasn't a quote review user, right? This was blank. The second time, I'm already this review user here. And so this is something that we asked our team, hey, if something goes to the quote review team more than once, do you want a new person every time, or do you want to keep whoever did it the first time as the first time? And they said, we want to keep the person the same. And so that's how we built this to function. A lot of our quotes team also is driven by dashboards that show you the current open queue and who's assigned what and how long it's been there. I didn't show you this, but this quote workday hours is a formula that basically says how long was it since this quote was input. And so as they get longer and longer and get close to 16 workday hours, then they have it on their radar of this needs some attention. So that's how we manage. But yeah, you can do it any way you can imagine, I guess I would say.
Yeah. So to speak of Michelle's question, I think because Michelle, he's driving it to a queue, right, as opposed to an individual person initially. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like the work driver is that dashboard, right? You're not emailing a specific person or chatter notifying a specific person and saying, hey, do this thing, right? They're going and picking it off the dashboard.
Well, it's both actually. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, so the main driver for us, I think, is that quotes review dashboard. But because this flow was assigned to that quotes review team, every member of that review team gets a system email that alerts them and gives them the link to the record. Now, one thing to know about this,
you're using the queue and then the email assigned users function of the queue.
yes. Yeah, I don't know if I actually set it to do that or how you control that. I will say I don't have any control over this email, like the text of it.
Sure.
It says what it says, and I don't know if that's because of like where the orchestration is right now in terms of, But that's, and actually that was again a decision I made to say I'm just going to use Chatter and that automatic email feature. You can turn off whether you get email alerts from Chatter on a per user basis. Like the users
Sure.
can choose that. So that's just how I decided. But I think the root point of all of this is like there is lots of freedom here of you can have this run how you want to. So to your earlier point, it might be good to start off with a general plan, and then as you get down, make decisions like, hey, do I want to actually send an email and use a template? I'll show you later in this, you can build a text template variable inside of a flow and you can use that. But is that what you want to do, right? Like you'll have to make some of these decisions. So at least for my case, I thought that it was the simplest to kind of do everything with Chatter and then let the system update people as it will, and then encourage people to run off dashboards. So those are some of the decisions that I just happened to make, but you might make them differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's awesome feedback. Thanks.
Cool. Okay. Then real quick, let me run through the other because we get to see. This time I'm going to reject, and I'm not going to have comments. So you'll run into errors when the first time you do that, and like, oh, you told me to write
Looks like
comments,
we
here,
lost
but you
Chris
didn't
for a
give me any
second.
comments. So you'll have to put decisions like that in. But now I'm going to do the contracts team review. So similar process with this one, except in this
Chris,
case.
shout at us when you're
Oh,
back.
can you hear me still?
Or maybe it's my computer.
Am I cutting out?
You sound fine to me.
Oh, okay. Okay, so in this second type of review now, we need some information from the submitter. So on the first type, the sales team member just told me I need a quote team review. That was all I needed to know. In the contract team review, I need some more information. So we have, in this example, 3 different types of contracts review. And so we need to ask the user, which type are you asking for in this case? Let's say in our example that I want the 3rd type of review. I've got a signed contract and I want the order to be released. So the system's then going to go through to the next flow and it says, hey, I noticed that your payment method has not been specified. So if I look on this particular record, payment method is not specified. And so as a user, I say, oh, I don't want to specify that. Just leave me alone. Well, it doesn't let me go forward. I can click next if I want, but we just have them caught in a loop until you tell me, no, you need to give me a payment method. And this is nice because I've effectively created a validation rule without all of the encumbrances that a validation rule comes along with, right? And so basically by stopping them in the flow, I've required information from them before they can proceed, but I've not been so stuck with a validation rule, which is cool. Yeah, I agree, Dale. Okay, so now it's saying, all right, well, the team that's going to review this is contracts. Are you okay with that? Yes, that's what I want. And then it says you're done. And so now the user knows that nothing more is done from him and it's officially been in the queue. Again, as the contracts review team user, I get this email. If I go back and refresh this page, I will now see the contracts user. This is going to be similar to before, where it says, do you want to take ownership of this quote? I tried to put in, you'll notice this like red text as we go. I tried to be real explicit with folks of like, hey, you've put it in review, but you haven't fully submitted this yet. Anything red sort of popping out to them. And again, that was kind of just a nice feature in the screen flow that I had ability to control that text color and so on. I will take ownership and approve. And it's from this point, it's really the same as the other. In terms of the orchestration then, I need this to go away. Okay, so in terms of the orchestration, this time I went down this path. And so we had pre-work the same. This was the screen where we asked the user. So again, I chose the flow, the screen flow that I wanted was 2.1. I passed it in the record ID. So I'm going to get into variables here in a minute to show how that goes. But in this case, I assigned the record owner to be the one making those decisions of what type of review is it, and rather than the group. And then let me show this piece then. So in order for the screen flow to run on the correct record, inside 2.1, I needed to create a variable and then pass that variable in from the orchestration into the flow, and then I could use that variable. And I did this in quite a few different areas, but for example, and this gets to, I think someone mentioned at the beginning of the call that some of these flows, and especially Flow Orchestrator, it's doing like coding developer type things, but you're doing it just in this visual interactive window, so it doesn't feel quite as challenging. I'm certainly no expert in coding, but once you kind of get the idea of, okay, there's a variable, I just created it, I'm going to check this available for input. I have both of them checked here for some reason, but the main one I really need is available for input. When you check that box in this variable, then that lets you know in your orchestration here, if you were to create a new variable, refresh this page, you would then see another variable here that you could either include or not include, and then specify either, in this case, I'm using the record ID that the orchestration knows, or there's another one, I think it's this 3.2. Yeah, in this case, I'm calling flow 3.2, and it has input variables, and I'm actually just hard coding contracts team, right? I'm not, this isn't another reference to a variable or something in my flow. This is just a hard, text, so that when I open 3.2, I can make decisions, like in this one, I can decide something based on what is the review team set to. And so you can either use variables from other flows, variables that the Flow Orchestrator has, or like I've done in this example, just simply write in, I know that if I'm at this, I'm clicking around a lot, I know that if I'm at this leg in the flow, certain things are true. So I can just put them in right here. And then those are used as decisions to tell the flow which of these paths you want to go down. Okay, that was a lot I just threw at you. I think that's the main body. Any questions? I know we're kind of running short on time, so happy to show more. I think I just had some resources to give you guys heading out if there aren't any more questions.
I guess one of my questions, Chris, is the actual the orchestration component itself. Can you go back to the quote for me, the quote record?
Start screen thing, share. Okay. Here.
Yeah. So this work guide component, this totally new component to me. I don't know that I totally understand how I configure that component to get it to show what I want it to show.
So your screen, whatever your screen flow screens that you create, that's what shows in the work guide. And you simply, on the page layout, you drag the work guide in. And then in this example, I have put a visibility element on here to say only show if the in orchestration checkbox is set to true.
Okay, I see. But but you don't tell it, like, how does it know to show flows? Like, how do you tell it, point it to this orchestration?
Well, so I think this is what you're asking. Inside, so here's one of my screen flows. I will give it this screen. And then create this to look the way I want it to. And then in this flow, it only ever has one screen showing at a time. So whatever that screen is going to be shown inside the work guide.
I guess more what I'm asking is like, if you had, let's say you had multiple orchestrations on the quote object, how would that work guide know to show this orchestration and not some other orchestration?
Yes. So every time you call a flow in the orchestration here, you say who that's assigned to. And so if you have multiple runs, so the object is called an orchestration run, you can have multiple of them running, and I, as a user, might be assigned all 3 of them or 2 of the 5 or whatever, and they sort of stack up behind each other. So I have to do whichever one came to me first. I have to complete that step, and then once I do, it'll give me the one that was behind it. And I can show you this by in our example. If I were to set this, I have to go back. If I were to set this quote to quote team review, and then back to draft, and then quote team review, back to draft, quote team review, it's kicked off 3 different orchestration runs, and they'll pile up behind themselves. Yeah, does that answer then?
I think so.
You can, this may help too. You can look at the orchestration runs here. So this gets into when you're trying to like debug these things. It's not quite as easy as when you're creating a flow and you can just click debug and like type in some variables and go, because it's an orchestration. And like you're saying, it kind of, you can have multiple behind each other. So this view is very helpful in trying to debug what's going on. You know, you can see I have errors sometimes. Or like I said, if you get 3 back to back, you'll see them here, and you can go in also in here and see your paused and failed flow interviews. And this also helps you with debugging and figuring out like, why didn't that work? Where did it get stuck? What's sitting in pause status right now that needs to be cleaned up?
Okay, that's definitely helpful. Let me ask a really basic question. I'm an admin and I'm really inspired by what you're showing me, and I want to try to build my own orchestration. Is that just like a type of a new flow? How do I actually create new orchestration?
Yeah, it's not as easy to find as you might imagine.
Okay.
But it is a flow, yes, to answer your basic question. Let's see if I can find it on the fly here. I found, I was going to recommend some resources to you guys.
Okay, great.
I found, yeah, there we are right there. I did find it. So if you saw what I just did, instead of on this core tab that you're used to seeing with the new flow, go over here, and then you have Orchestrator. And I did record triggered is the one I did.
Cool.
But
awesome. That's
yeah,
super helpful. Thank you.
there's YouTube has some decent videos, and then I have been on the Trailhead group. There's one called Orchestrator, and that's been great. There's not really a ton there yet, so I'll feel like, you know, I'll ask a question and then it'll be 2 weeks before anybody asks another question, but I do get some answers. So that's part of this, is I wanted to encourage all of you to, you know, get out there, start trying orchestration, just start building up more of the community trying this, so that we can all kind of benefit and help each other out.
Sweet. That's awesome.
And that's all I've got.
Well, I mean, awesome stuff. I love to see this new technology. You know, I haven't played around with Orchestrator once, and I love Flow, so I feel behind. But this is really cool. And of course, personally, I'm really excited to see how you're progressing Script Pro and having them leverage the latest and greatest from Salesforce. So thanks again for filling out the speaker interest form and for being here and volunteering your time and your expertise. Where can folks snag the resources that you wanted to share? Will you publish those in the community for us?
Yeah, sure. Just links to the Orchestrator Trailhead you're saying, or
Yeah,
Trailblazer
that'd be
group.
great.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the group on what we just saw from Chris? I was looking in the chat. I don't see anything specific in the chat, but now's the time. Jump off mute, ask your question.
What were there any things that, as you were going through building all that out, because obviously it wasn't, you just snapped your fingers and it happened. What were some roadblocks?
I mean, I think the biggest one was not being able to just Google Flow Orchestrator. You know, I need a variable in my screen flow and getting something right away, because there just haven't been, at least that I could find, a ton of people using it yet. I would say that was the most difficult, but that, and then I guess number 2 would be trying to debug why it wasn't happening. before I found this pause and failed flow interviews, I was like, how do I even like I can't make it work. So then, but then you figure out, okay, well, if I need to see how this is working, I can just introduce an error on purpose right here, run it, then it fails, then I can step into it and I can see that visual path that it broke. So similar to how I feel like Flow was before they had the more advanced debugging stuff. It's kind of the same story, at least as what I found for Flow Orchestrator.
Gotcha. And then as you were actually building the flow, so not even like, I mean, that's a great example of you've built the whole thing. Now you're going to test it or debug it, and that's when the errors present themselves. Were there any roadblocks where like you went from one node to the next, and there was a no, you can't do this, do not pass go, anything like that? Or because I think everybody as they're learning flow, maybe they're more advanced in flow, maybe they're now going down the orchestrator path, whatever. Everybody's going to have expectations of what they expect to work and to actually connect with each other, but then they get some kind of an error message. So were there any things like those that you just expected could work, should work, and it wouldn't even let you save because of an error?
Yes, there's a perfect example of that in public groups. And actually, this was someone else had this question on the orchestrator Trailblazer, and I was able to answer it because I was like, oh, that exact thing happened to me. So on the quotes, any of these teams, so here's my quote review team, there's this checkbox that defaults to being on, grant access using hierarchies. And so I'm like, okay, it stays on by default. I guess I'll just leave it on. And then my process would just get stuck, like you were saying, when it's between the step where it was trying to assign the user over here. Oh, you don't see my screen anymore, do you? Anyway, sorry. On the public groups, there's a checkbox, and if you leave it checked, which it is by default, when it goes to assign it to the group, it just doesn't. And I'm like, I chose the group, I've got the people, it all should work, and it just doesn't work. And so, it was one of those of, by letting it fail, then I could go and look at the paused and failed interviews and see that that was the one, and see that it stops on this step. Okay, what step am I in? And then that it's a problem there. So what could be the problem? And you just try stuff until it works. But yes, there's absolutely that sort of everything should be right, and it just isn't. But I think persistence is the way you get through those.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like to call opposite day. The way they wrote it on the screen is, okay, if this box is checked, we will do this, but in reality, it's the opposite. If you check this box, this won't happen. Like, where was the proofreader on this? Gotcha. Any other questions?
Well, I don't see any questions rolling in from the chat. So again, big thanks to you, Chris, for being here and for sharing your time and your insights on Flow Orchestrator. And I'm sure you're going to get lots of questions in the community now that you've put your neck out there.
The next presenter, go try this, and then you can present about all the fun things that you found. That's what I want to see.
I love it.
Nice. All right. Well, yes, echoing Jeff, thank you, Chris, and thank you, David. I think Ben had to jump off. David, if you're still on. Actually, I don't see David on there either, but thank you to Prodly. One last pitch, if you want to enter the Prodly's raffle for the $100 gift card, go to that link. I'm going to let them know when we've closed out the meeting, and then their marketing team will go ahead and do the drawing. So you still got a couple of minutes. As I mentioned at the top, we do not have another meeting scheduled. So again, speaker interest form, do just exactly what Chris did. I shared the link to that in the chat as well. If you have any topic, whether it's your company's use case, something that you've built in a dev org, something just about Salesforce that fascinates you, whatever, no topic is off limits. So put it in the form. We'd love to have you on stage. We'll get a meeting set up. And just appreciate the consideration. I don't have anything else to throw out there. Jeff, what about you?
I don't have anything either. And I couldn't echo what you said more because, you don't want to just listen to me talk the whole time. So how about somebody submit something and then we can have cool people like Chris demoing cool technology. So especially interested in, selfishly, I'm really interested in Salesforce products that maybe we don't get a chance to see very much of very often, right? Like, if there's anybody out there in our community who's using some like niche thing in Marketing Cloud or some niche thing in like Commerce Cloud or something, I don't know. I live my life in like sales and service and the big ones, right? A little bit of financial services. So if your company is using something a little bit different, definitely shoot us a note because we'd love to have you. We all don't know what we don't know, right? And maybe the thing that you're using is exactly what somebody else needs, but they didn't even know it was something you could get from Salesforce. So.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. Like when I was an admin, Congo was my best friend because I was sending myself reports for data integrity and using the SOQL builder to really dive deep into what was going on in the org. Nobody else saw those reports, but it definitely helped me answer questions to sales, to customer service, to upper management of why data was bad, rather than running reports or doing data loader exports, all that kind of stuff. Conga, I just set it all up and hit a button. It sends me everything I need to know, and it's a great way it's a great additional way to use a tool that you've already purchased. We'd also love to see the unsung heroes of the platform, like reporting snapshots. You never hear anybody talk about those kinds of things, but huge value out of them. Where have you pulled out a deep track on Salesforce and really maximized it? Anything, again, is fair game. But
sort of like what Chris was saying, like if you Googled it and you couldn't really find stuff, that means there are other people out there who are Googling it and not finding stuff. So if you have some hands-on real-world experience with something that you sort of had to learn yourself, that's a great opportunity for user group session that people far and wide might get a lot of value from. I'm seeing Matt in the chat talking about want to see more about how others are using Community Cloud.
That's an excellent challenge to everyone out there.
Yeah, and especially like there's so much cool stuff you can do with Community Cloud, even for guest users. Just as a public website, right? A way to share information directly from your CRM out to the public. So lots of really cool Community Cloud use cases, even without paid licensing, because those sites are available right out the box without buying any sort of customer community licenses. So
well, and for those who are interested in learning about Community Cloud, it's in DevOps too.
Yeah, it is. Good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Well, let's call it early, Dale. How does that sound? A whole 8 minutes back in your day, everybody.
Gives me time to breathe a little bit before the next 2 hours of meetings. So.
Yeah, sounds perfect. Thanks again, everybody, for being here. Again, thank you for making your WebEx name your real name so we know that you were here. Thanks for sticking around to the end. And if you didn't already, you have 30 more seconds to enter the Prodly raffle before we close the chat.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Be well.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See ya.